Welcome back to World Evidence. I'm your host, Fareed. This is episode 2 of my new podcast. A podcast that explores the human condition through current events, news, political, sociological, even spiritual. So, let's get started. The biggest thing on people's tongues for the past week has been the fiasco with Donald Sterling. He's been accused of a racist remark that TMZ has gotten a recording of. This alleged voice recording has him speaking ill about African Americans and Latinos. And it's a very unfortunate happenstance to happen to the NBA. And wholesomely damaged the NBA altogether, their players, the organization, the face of the organization. Because racism seems to still be prevalent in the United States. If you look at the recent news, first we have that rancher, Cliven Bundy, down in Nevada, making his racist comments on slavery and African Americans. And then we have Donald Sterling in recent days with his comments about Latinos and African Americans. We can argue that racism has grown exponentially in the past 10 years. And we could attribute it to the change in the political race. Not the political race that you know, but race as in the color of skins. Lately, we've had more ethnic groups enter Congress, enter the judicial system, and recently, in the past presidential elections, we've had more African Americans, most of all, in office in the executive branch. This changing tide can't be coincidence if you tie it with the recent racist uprising. So you can't deny that the more minorities that are present in our society in higher levels of government work has affected the mindset of the racist into coming out and being more vocal about their beliefs. We know that racism is a relic that should have been buried a long time ago. It's something, though, you can't admit that it won't stop. Hateful people will always appear in different facets of life, different places, different times. We would think back to the Jim Crow times where racism was at its peak in this country, and in the Civil War as well. You can say that it rises and falls like a sine wave. And we've had significant strides into suppressing racism, education, growing our children up into disregarding the color of our neighbor's skin. And it's helped tremendously. But there will be always the individuals who will develop their hate, develop their malice, their disgust with those who aren't them. And I say them because they're the individuals. They individually think no one's better than them. They just pin it on a race because the greater the number of people that you can localize as a certain group, the more powerful you feel in justifying your hatred. Hitler did it. It's so clear. And hatred will last. And it's a very unfortunate part of our human condition. We can safely say that hatred is impossible to avoid. We've all had bouts of hatred, not towards a group of people, but numerous things. I hate pumping gas. I think it's an inconvenience. I probably wouldn't get an electric car because I don't want to wait for hours on end to pump my electrical fuel. So I hate electric cars. It doesn't mean I won't use one. It doesn't mean I won't get along with one. So it's overcoming your hatred that builds on human character. Because eventually we're going to drive electric cars. I have to get used to it. So we eventually have to get used to all the races of this world. These men won't. These people won't, simply because they think the world has to get used to them. Donald Sterling, I'm sure, had that mentality. And it's very unfortunate that he did. The Clippers, his team that he owns, they have probably the best shot into becoming the Western Conference division winners in the playoffs. I feared before Donald Sterling's ban given to him from the NBA that the Clippers would have tanked through the playoffs in protest. I'm sure they won't do it now after the NBA gave them their ruling. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, knew better than to let this racist who stained the image of the NBA by owning a team, to let him go and be his racist self. You have to say it was bound to happen. You're on a team that 70% of the NBA is African American, and you own a piece of that organization. If you're a racist, you had it coming. We can say that one racist weeded out from society is a step forward in the right direction. I'm not so sure, though. Perhaps the divide in our country, in the United States, is being perpetuated further by fingering the man who is considered a deviant in our society. Those who share in his sentiments will feel the need to rise further. In the past decade, we've noticed that most hate groups have risen to the cause. The Scarborough Church, the Tea Party, a lot of these groups that have malice in their hearts, even neo-Nazi groups, have become stronger in the past decade. We can't stop the hatred. It's a very unfortunate part of our core. Our ability to think for ourselves, come to conclusions, the fuzzy logic in which our emotional thinking stems from. It's hard to stop. Maybe the unification of our nations could do some worth in binding us as one single people. But until we accept that we are all different from one another, which may never come. You can have hope in it, but you probably won't live to see it through this lifetime. No one has. No one has lived through their lifetime without seeing a shred of racism, even from Babylonian times. It has always been prevalent, and it's something that, unfortunately, we cannot stop. If there will be a day, praise the Lord. But for now, we have to root and stem it in the hatred of people. The past month, we've experienced a pretty large loss of life. I apologize that this podcast is sounding grim. First, we're talking about racism, but it's unavoidable to talk about the bad things that have happened in this month alone. We've had a ferry sink off the coast of Korea. I see in the news that an airstrike in Syria has killed 33 people in Aleppo, a rebel-controlled district. The search for Malaysia Flight 370 is still on. We can assume that everyone's alive there, out of spite of our hopes. But what if, again, it would be a unnecessary loss of life, whether by accident or someone's tragic happenstance that they were there to bring the plane down, or the negligence of the ferry captain who just left his boat without a care of the passengers on them, or the roaring Syrian opposition against the Syrian regime, a trade of loss of life that has been perpetuated through months and months of battle, guerrilla warfare, of disagreements. The human life is almost a commodity as we use people and disuse people to take more lives. And we can't control keeping them. Look at the disposable rate of our kind. We are 7 billion large. 33 dead. 270 dead. A dent in the numbers. You can say that the people who have much more cherished lifestyles would just see it as numbers. Lives are meaningless. At least to them. At least to those who control the lives of others. The numbers don't matter. When in fact, numbers don't lie. Even something as great as 10 to the common man is a devastating number. To an even more common person who has an emotional connection to humankind would cringe at just even seeing one person critically injured. The businessman sitting at the top of his tower, when he finds out that an employee throws himself from the building at Foxconn, committing suicide because of the conditions in which he's working in. When he hears about that, you can assume that he's only thinking about the losses to his production rate. A reality that we live in is that human lives are disposable. Disposable to the right people. Wars have used indisposable people. Business has used indisposable people. Protection. It's unfortunate, but it's very true. Disposable people have paved the future's way. And we can give a name for each person who has died for the symbol of progress, for freedom, for justice. When could that stop, though? When will we find the point in which we do not need the disposable human life to achieve progression, evolution of our society? This stems back to the man with power, even back to the talk of racism. Man would do anything if he has the strength to, and if he has the human life in his hand. He will use it, shamelessly so, and good things may fruit from the sacrifice of people who didn't matter to this one person. We can only hope that the leaders of countries remembers those who laid down their lives. The United States does. We have veteran walls and monuments for those who have laid their lives down for multiple wars. But other countries don't have that luxury. I'm sure that Syrian rebels are actually fighting for a cause against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. And they die. Who remembers them? No one does. They have some monuments to those who did martyr themselves to a cause of their country. But at the end of history, who remembers them? After the conflict, if it ever ends, who remembers them? The numbers keep piling on. The people's names keep rolling into the books. Somebody's got to put that book away someday, and then it becomes forgotten. What about those in the Vietnam War? On the Vietnamese side, a lot of villagers have laid down their lives in defense of their own country. Nobody remembers them. Disposable people. Very unfortunate that we cherish life in our society, but the people who are in charge of us to help us grow and develop throw us away. The accident that happened at the coast of South Korea, the ferry accident, that's a throwaway of life. The captain just left as the ship capsized into the ocean. Flight 370, another loss of life. Disposable, if anything. We don't know what happened, but we do know there should have been a lot of emergency procedures this pilot could have taken. I'm not saying he's negligent, but it's an unfortunate accidental loss of life that could have been avoided. The Malaysian government recently called for a better way of tracking aircraft in the sky to avoid these accidents that happen, if you can call it an accident. We don't know. That's loss of life at its best, accidental or not. It's a plane that's missing. I do hope it's found. We do need answers. But going back to disposable life, you can't rely on the 7 billion of us to fill those gaps. Nobody can fill the gap of a personality in the ethereal set of billions of human beings. people are precious. We know that. And the leaders need to see that. Perhaps someday there will be a time where man can retire his ways of killing, of using people for their ways of sacrificing man for evolution, for progress. We hope that day comes sooner, but unfortunately, this is the world we live in. It's a grim, dark moment in time. And it has been since the dawn of man. But we can hope. We can hope that the issue in Ukraine gets resolved with no more further loss of life. That Israel and Palestine could find a solution that allows peace in the region without any more causes for casualties. And we can hope that terrorism becomes a relic of the past. We don't see suicide bombers. We don't see plots of mass destruction and death caused by those who claim they fight for freedoms or a religious point. Could we hope for more? Could we hope for world peace? It's likely that it can be achieved if we can do away with the bigotry, the ignorance, the racism, the use of life, killing, the defacing, all sorts of terrible things we do to each other. That continues to be the wish of mankind. As a whole, that's a wish. As an individual, it'll take a very long time to see.
You're telling me to breathe, but I can't catch a breath. You're telling me to sleep, but I can't bear to rest. Running through my blood like an animal, like an animal, like an animal. And I need to release the energy inside me, 'cause you make my world shake. I'll behave like an animal, like an animal, like an animal.
This has been episode 2 of World's Evidence. I hope you enjoyed the content that we reviewed. The conversation is open. Please leave your comments below. I'll be commenting back, engaging myself in the conversation. Let's go ahead and discuss anything about the content you wish to talk about upon hearing this podcast today. Again, World's Evidence, that name is still in progress, and I do hope some of you come up with some good ideas as to finding a good name for this new show. I could keep it the same, or please give me a great name. You can catch me on Google+. My Google Plus profile will be used to talk in the comment section. My name is Fareed. Thank you again for listening. Have a pleasant day.